Thank you all for coming out. Today we've got a really cool artist panel. First off, we've got Eva Gardner from Pink, Cher, Gwen Stefani. Who else did I forget? Because you play with so many different artists. I said Cher, Pink, Gwen Stefani, Mars Volta, Thicke and Sarah, thank you. I'll just let you guys talk. How's that? We also have Bob Glaub. Where's Bob? Bob, come on up. I could go down Bob's resume, but we'll be here for the next 3 days. What do you need, sir? There you go. Most recently, Bob was just on the road with Jackson Browne. I got to see my friend Bob in Boston, and if you see Jackson on tour, please go see Jackson Browne. You'll see Bob playing as well, right? Yeah. And like I said, just Google search Bob, and you'll see his amazing resume. Just Bob. Yeah, just Bob. What about Bob? And of course, last minute, I'm putting him completely on the spot now. We have Mr. Sean Hurley, who's going to come up, and Sean, again, amazing resume. John Mayer, man. No? Mics? Are we hot? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Nothing. How are you?
I apologize. You just
Quite
came
all
in
right.
to say hi,
I just
and
want
I
to
roped
come
you
and
into
hang out
doing
with
this.
Bob and Eva. Nice to see you.
Sean.
Oh, it is working.
And we also have Darryl is in the process of trying to get his car parked over at the Hilton, but he is on his way too. So as soon as he comes in, I'll jump off the stage and Darryl can come up here as well, and we're going to have a cool conversation. So how many bass players do we have here? How many guitar players do we have? Drummers? All right, we'll talk slow. That's my one and only drummer joke. I promise. I promise. Like I said, I'm an out-of-work comedian. So I've got some questions for you guys, and we're going to open it up for questions in the audience too. But hopefully, some of my questions will answer some of the questions that everybody has in the audience as well. So I'm going to say you guys all have very high-profile gigs. And, of course, obviously, to get those high-profile gigs, you are at the top of your game. You're the best at what you do. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs going around here. So let me ask you, what was your journey to get to those high-profile gigs, if you don't mind me asking in such a roundabout way?
I feel like, hi, everybody. Oh, here he is.
Ah.
Hi, Darryl.
Come on up.
You got a bass, too. What are you doing?
Wow.
I'm at the NAMM show. What are you doing?
Welcome.
How you doing, Good to see you. Good to see you. You know Sean? You know Sean Hurley?
No, you know what?
Have we met?
Yeah, I suppose I'll. Darryl, what's up, brother? How are you? Good. Sorry for you to come running in late like that. Everybody, welcome Darryl Jones.
Darryl Jones. That's one way you get gigs.
Is to be on time.
Be on time.
Of course. I apologize if I'm blocking your view here. I'll probably let me see if I can move out of the way here. Do we also have another microphone, or should we be handing back and forth?
Yeah, we'll just hand back.
That's it? Okay, 4 mics.
No.
So, cool. I'm going to sit down here like a little kid. Just pray to the gods of bass. So, anyway, I'm sorry, Eva. You're in the process of.
Well, I was going to say, interestingly, I was told no a lot. Even from the very beginning, when I showed interest in bass, I was told no. And I think in being told no, it made me really realize what I really wanted, and I worked harder, and being told no made me decide that I wanted to turn that into a yes, and it just didn't come easily for me, and I think that I'm grateful for that, because that's how I established my work ethic, and I had to work harder to prove myself and to stand out and to be above the norm, right? What makes you stand out at an audition? What makes you stand out as a band member? What's going to make someone call you back for another gig? Or how are they going to think about you when you get when there's an opening for a gig? So I think that just really making the decision that about what I wanted and doing what it takes to make it happen.
Cool.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Her father was a great bass player who I knew. Did he dissuade you from playing
he didn't
because
wa-
he knew what a hard road it was?
He didn't want me to play.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but that made me want it even more.
I have daughters, so I understand.
But do you discourage your daughters from pursuing, or not discourage, but
no, I totally encouraged my kids, but they, went in other directions.
Sure.
They're in the show business, but not musicians.
Okay.
But no, I didn't dissuade them at all. They had music lessons when they were kids. No, I was just curious because I was friendly with her father.
Sure. Does anybody else want to comment on that? The question was, like, obviously you're all from working high-profile gigs, and to cut to the chase, it was kind of like, what was your journey to get to those high-profile gigs? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
I would have to say the first thing that where I really got lucky was I had a teacher from when I first started that did not let me off the hook. Like when I was, first holding down notes and I told him it hurt, he said, "It's going to hurt for a while." He made me play correctly from the beginning. And I have to say that in a way, making me be that detailed about getting stuff right kind of taught me how to teach myself, or how to, it was a kind of one basic thing that really kind of made a difference for me, looking back on it now.
Sean, do you have any insight?
Well, I grew up in a small town, so for me there were almost no bass players. So just by having a bass and studying and getting it early, I found myself kind of being ushered up into playing with older guys, and then seeing, not really being challenged to keep up with them, but realizing it was a situation with, if I could hang with these guys, then I would learn more, and then it kind of ignited a passion to go, okay, I like this feeling, I want to keep going. And as I was learning to read, I'd play jazz bands, rock bands, and it just being open to everything and saying yes to every opportunity, even if it was walking into the unknown, I think allowed me to get lucky, get the next gig, meet new people, take lessons from new teachers, and kind of having a lot of it was being naive, not knowing when I would hit a wall, but just being, open and saying yes generally gets other, comments or people asking you to be part of other musical situations.
Yeah. Cool. Tips on being professional. Once you get to that situation where, you've come through the ropes. And I know this is an obvious question, but, obviously, there's obvious answers, but I think we should reiterate. What does being a professional mean? Like, how it is a business, but it's also an art form too.
Well, it means different things in different, situations. But being on time is part of being professional. I'm just busting my buddy here.
Wow.
No, that
I just put that up on a
goes
tee
without
for you,
saying
Bob.
that goes without saying anything. That's being
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I find, besides all the obvious, having good sounding gear, being proficient at it, knowing a lot of styles of music, being like somewhat of a music historian, meaning that you're not a musicologist that's at like a college professor level, but you've listened to a lot of kinds of music. So if somebody references something, anything from Howlin' Wolf to, Coltrane to, Buffy St. Marie, I don't know, folk, jazz, blues, R&B, Commodores, whatever you like to listen to, listen to Latin jazz. Even if you are not proficient in all of it, you'll know what somebody's talking about if they make a reference. So there's that, and I think I have found through, a long time doing this that bringing a bit of levity to a situation really helps. When you have somebody in the studio who, well, we'll say in the old days, who had a $250,000 budget for a record. Now that might be $15,000 or $20,000. It doesn't matter the amount. They've got their whole lifetime. They've spent this whole lifetime writing these 10 songs, and they're very nervous usually and serious about it. You know, having somewhat of a, maybe without being a class clown, a sense of humor about things, bringing a bit of lightness to a situation, making it fun, and bringing something to the party other than just being able to play the notes, you know, getting along with people, you know, adding suggestions, but without taking over is a fine line, without trying to step on the toes of a producer. Maybe have ideas for sounds, but not step on the toes of an engineer. Yeah, they're all little, very nuanced things that just make things happen. You know, teamwork, being like a team player.
Cool.
I would add to that recurring theme for me in my career is being prepared, and it's so obvious, but it's so important also. And I think that you know, showing up to a gig or an audition or a rehearsal and not knowing the songs, it's like it's a waste of time for you and everyone else. And you know, I think being prepared for anything is key.
Here, here.
Yeah, I second that.
I third that.
I had a situation where I went in. A guy brought me some music. I was, I guess I was about 20. Guy brought me some music for an artist named Otis Clay, who was like a Otis Redding type soul singer. I listened to it one time and thought, oh, that's cool. You know, I can do that. You know, and I didn't look at it again until the rehearsal. Actually, now that I think about it, I was younger than 20 because my mom ended up taking me to the rehearsal, and I sat there and, you know, and I didn't know the guy's music, and of course the musicians, and, you know, he didn't say anything. He was just fuming, and the musicians who were playing with him said, "Yo, man, you know, you got to get this together. We play tomorrow," and that was nothing compared to the tongue lashing my mother gave me when I got, you know, when I got in the car to go home. And she just said that, your father works, I work. If you're going to be a musician, you have to work, and to work you have to be prepared. And so it really, and so I went home that night and I learned all of that music that night. I got, you know, and I was lucky I was able to. And so it's a really important thing. It continues to reoccur. I look at music and say, oh, this is not that hard. And then, you know, 3 days before the gig, I'm realizing, oh, sweat, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so it behooves you, which is what the guy said to me. It would behoove you to go and learn this music. So I would say very strongly to be prepared, yeah.
Kind of like that situation when you show up for rehearsal and nobody listened to the tunes.
Yeah.
And now everybody's trying to learn the tunes on your time, sort of situation. I know there's like a meme that's going around Facebook now. It's like, you know, rehearsal is for rehearsing the tunes, not learning the tunes, sort of thing.
That's
true.
valuable.
Yeah. Did I say that right? Meme or meme?
Meme,
Okay.
yeah. Meme is your grandmother.
Oh, actually, it would be younger in my case, but
I did want to make one comment about what you said about being a music historian. I just met a young woman bass player. Her name is Ryan Medora, and she's got a book out called Bass Players to Know.
that's right.
It is
yeah.
beautifully set up where she gives you a little bit of bass player's name, information, records that he played on. There's even a Spotify playlist so that you can go and like listen to the songs that she says, oh, check Paul Chambers out for this. Yeah. Check Tommy Cogbill.
Yeah.
I wasn't hip.
You were Muscle Shoals.
You know,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know the music, but I didn't know him by name specifically.
Never loved the man.
David
the way I love
Hood,
you.
David Hood.
David Muscle
I've been
Shoals.
teaching people the bass line to
I'll
Take You There as like a lesson. I did not know that was his name, but it gives you a little bit of history. I would highly suggest this book, Bass Players to Know by Ryan Medora.
Bass Players to Know. I saw that book for the first time last night at the bass hang.
Yeah, it's really
they were
great,
selling.
and it's a fun read as well.
Cool. Let's change subjects a little bit here. So, you're all been on the road. You're all veterans of being on the road. can you give us a little like tips of being on the road? How do you stay healthy? How do you stay fresh? I mean, I know, Eva, you were on the road for basically the last year and a half. 4 years. Okay, I shortchanged you a little bit there, sorry. But I mean, like,
right.
you know, a lot of people think, oh, it's rock and roll, you're partying on the bus, you're doing this, it's all... But it's really not that way. And it can't be that way if you want to stay healthy, going from city to city to city. So any tips or suggestions or...
I mean, just that, you know, you know, you don't have to be at every party.
Yeah.
I even, you know, I'm kind of, you know, I kind of try to be halfway in between what Bob was just saying, where you know, you're there, you have a sense of humor, you know, using whatever charm you have to get along with people, and at the same time realizing that you don't have to be a part of every conversation, you don't have to be a part, you don't have to go to every party, you don't have to, you know, your job is to be happening and be ready and at your best for those 2 hours or 2 hours plus that you're going to be on stage, and that should be your focus. And so if getting enough sleep makes you better, then make sure you get enough sleep. If not having a cold and not having the flu and having to go on stage like that, then, you know, take measures so that you don't get sick, you know.
Yeah.
Good advice for NAMM as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
hope you guys all brought your hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
yeah, kind of the same as you know, when you're home, like exercise, sleep.
Sure.
You know, do whatever you like to do on your downtime. Don't go to every party. You know, eat right. I like to on a show day. You know, oftentimes you'll do a sound check and then there's a dinner right before the gig, and I hate eating right before the gig. So I make sure I eat, like, you know, my biggest meal is lunch that day. On other days, on off days, you know, I'll do something different. But on show day, you know, that's what I like to do. I like to get a walk in or go to the gym, you know, and get on a treadmill. Whatever makes me feel good. You know, exercise, sleep, and eating right. It's just kind of like keys to life. It's common sense. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, and calling the grandkids and kids at home always makes me feel good. If I don't call them, then I feel, oh shit, I didn't call them, and you know, I get off stage and it's too late to call them, and you know, I'm bummed out. So that makes me feel good.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to be a downer, you know. Bring some joy.
Roles as bassists. In your roles, in your respective roles. Obviously, to go up and play bass, but what are some of your other roles in your respective gigs?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it's foundation, right? And I think that as a bass player, being a good hang, being easy to get along with, being reliable, being prepared.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm in a rehearsal and everyone's looking at me for the next part because I actually did my homework. I mean, I don't know. I have high standards, but like I think that as a bass player, we can't get away with as much as other instrumentalists or other musicians. So we've got to be there. We've got to be on it, and in that way, we create that foundation, and we're that glue that holds everything together. So, and I think a lot of times, musically and personally as well, I think that we're known as kind of being easygoing and go with the flow, and Switzerland in a lot of situations. So
Switzerland.
Very true. Very true.
How about in terms of you see more and more bassists getting, and for some reason bassists getting more and more into production, into doing producing and music directing for that matter too. Obviously, as a bass player, you show up, you play your role as the bass, but in some cases you have to come up with arrangements. You have the dirty job of telling your buddy, the guitar player, that that's not the right part. So how do you
I think it
handle that?
really does go back to what Eva said. It's like, we have to be present on the first beat.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, we have to be present on the first beat. And I did a session recently, and I was wondering, it was like, why am I the only one who's like having to do overdubs? And I realized, okay, well, the guitar player, he's going to redo his stuff, and the saxophone player, he's going to redo his stuff. The drummer, he's got to lay a solid track and everything. but he doesn't have to deal with notes. So
right.
He's got to deal with the rhythm and the stuff. I got to deal with the rhythm and the notes.
Yeah.
So I think that you just, it falls to a bass player to, you got to know where you're going to be on one. The guitar player can kind of scoot around that and, and hear what's happening and then play. We don't have that, and so I think because we have to know the music, it brings all of these other things that you just mentioned. Since you know the song, since you know the arrangement, you're in that situation a lot, then somebody's going to start looking at you and saying, well, why don't you be the person that tells us, what the song is and what everything is. So I think that, in that way it leads to, it kind of leads to those other things, or can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think bass players, just by the nature of the instrument, you're playing less notes, right? Usually. In the music we all play, you're playing less notes per minute than anyone else in the orchestra or band. And you kind of have I think bass players hear everything, maybe because of that. I never even thought of it, really. But I think you get to hear everything. You're playing with the drummer. You actually know exactly what the drummer's doing, because the guitar player might not know that, oh, yeah, he's doing don't. He might not know that, but you know that because your bass part goes along with it. So I think bass players have a natural ability to hear the whole music as a whole. It's just a natural thing. That's why there's a lot of bass player MDs.
I think there's a holistic view that if you're really invested in being a bass player, you're listening to the whole thing. You know what's happening when you're not playing, and you know what's happening when you are playing, and then you get trusted. I think you, through doing all these things we're talking about, you get a trust that the artist trusts you, the band trusts you, and naturally when there's a question, all eyes turn, am I doing it right? Am I doing it? And then that trust leads to, you might be producing, you might be co-writing. You can take it as far as that relationship allows you to. And not every situation has the unlimited relationship. You may not end up producing for every artist, but there will be some that they connect, they know they can rely on you, and that can be, the lucky break you're looking for.
Interesting.
I think also, what you said, earlier about the, were you one that said holistic? You said holistic. But about, I always feel like it's my job to the foundation thing, I always feel like it's my job to make everything feel right, Or, when I think about the Stones, it's like we're in ear monitors, and I use floor monitors. But I always feel like I want to hear what everybody is doing, and I want to I want what I do to be a part of making everyone comfortable, And I will say that, in terms of being a bass player who works, working on your feel and working on when you play with the drummer, that it is an unusually pleasurable experience. That will help you work. Yeah. Because, when everybody, when guys play with you, they go, oh man, that really felt good, and the word spreads. It's one of those things that you can use to kind of help yourself, get more and more work.
I gotcha. Cool. Let's open it. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? Show of hands, anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to ask the four of you, what has been your favorite session and what made it that?
Oh, wow.
What was your favorite session and what made it your session? I'm going to repeat your question because it's just so. I'm not mocking. I'm just repeating.
That's a really hard question. I won't say a number because I have no idea, but I've done a lot of sessions. So, there's some standouts, Linda Ronstadt records that, maybe not were #1 hits, but got a lot of radio play. To be sitting in a room like this close to her, singing behind a baffle, one of the great singers of our time. It was a thrill. It was like goosebump time. David Lindley record, like El Rayo X. When you play on a record and you go, fuck, that's going to be people are going to hear that. You never want to say, "Oh yeah, that's going straight to #1," but you don't want to be a pompous ass, but you know it's good and that people are going to hear it and like it. So there's just been a lot of those moments, and those are just a couple. I mean, I don't want to go on and on and on. I'm just lucky to have played with a lot of great people, and continue. I'm lucky, pinch myself every day that I still get to do that, be around talented people.
I'd say my favorite session was the one I did yesterday because it was a lot of fun. It was like I was reminded why I love doing it, why I love living in LA, because I got a text at Monday night at 2 a.m. and the guy was like, "Hey, are you available Thursday?" And I was. It was great. Yes. But it's more seriously was, for me, this one song I played on, it was a John Mayer record, and I'd gotten asked to come in and make a record. It was my first recording with him, and I toured, and it was a song called Queen of California, and he just had, it's like I was, he needed a bass line that was creative and would kind of move around and not just follow the root notes, and I just happened to tap into something that, we don't just sit around with untapped bass lines ready to go and waiting for, oh man, if he plays something that goes G to C.
So you don't have a catalog of bass lines like ready to go at any second?
And he kills it, so go listen to that track.
Yeah, for me, that was one where like, hey man, all the prep of like, I always want to be creative at any moment of the day, and when someone gives you that runway to do it, that was it for me. That's cool.
I actually, one of the I wasn't even playing. I was, it was a Neil Young record, and I arrived and they were playing a tune. It was a 40-piece string orchestra, and I watched Neil Young play guitar and use a harmonica, play a harmonica, and sing this tune live with this string orchestra, and I mean. I literally got choked up twice, watching the musicians. Waddy Wachtel was on guitar, playing this incredible, pedal steel part on a guitar, and it was just something very, very memorable. Other sessions. Oh, my first recording with Miles Davis was pretty amazing, and scary as hell, because he asked. There was this tune, Decoy, which is a bass line. I didn't know the song. It wasn't something we played. It was written for the record. And so I'm playing it, and I'm just, barely able to read it. And we've run through it a few times, and I'm thinking, okay, I got it under my fingers, And right before we record, Miles says, "Darryl, thump it." And I'm like, "What part?" And he said, "All of it." But it ends up being like this really, kind of, I don't know. It was like one of the, it's one of the gifts of my, of my career. So
you just got the stamp of approval from the boss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he just asked me to do. He did what Miles does. He asked me to do something that I didn't know I could do, and then it turns out great. So
cool. We're just about out of time. So I see a hand, kind of. Yes, sir. Oh, this could be bad. Worst on-stage experience.
I have an easy one. When my amp died, it was a rental in Manila.
It wasn't an Ampeg, was it?
It was an amp.
Okay.
It was a rental, but it died. First two songs, and we were
that
filming.
concludes our session for the session.
Yeah. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. But the amp died, and we were filming for MTV Manila, and but this is what I did. I stayed as cool as a cucumber, pretended that nothing was wrong, and by the third song, they got it all fixed. They sorted me out, and we went into the studio the next day, and I was able to play and record the stuff, so for broadcast, they could handle it. But because I didn't act like a freak and go, what's happening, when they showed the footage, I was just, I'm cool. My amp is not dead. And so it turned a bad thing into a little bit of lemonade.
Again, being a professional.
Oh, I think the worst thing that happened was about halfway, or maybe a third of the way through a show once, I realized my zipper was down on my jeans. That was really lame. So, that's probably the one.
Bob, I got to tell you.
If that's the worst of yours, I'm not even telling mine. No way. It's flying low. So what? Mark Egan is in the room.
Yes.
Amazing bassist.
Yep. Welcome, Mark. Eva, do you have a worst?
I can't think of one.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I remember one show where I ended up with my head in the bass drum, but that was actually kind of fun. Just got to make lemonade out of it, right? Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, guys, we're just about out of time. Any last?
What about like going to meet, having the gig is great. How do you meet people? Like, where do you go to jam? Living in Los Angeles is a pretty great luxury. Is it just like going to open jams and playing with people? Like, gelling is obviously a great thing to have, but where do you go? Where do you meet people?
Yeah, I think he's asking like, how do you meet people? Where do you go? How do you create your network, basically? And I think it's all those things. You go to open jams. You show up, and if there are places where they're going to be doing a certain repertoire, then learn the repertoire, and definitely like just putting yourself out there and saying yes to things, and that's how you meet people. Just I think for me, it's like you throw a bunch of, and I use this all the time. You throw a bunch of spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. Just try a bunch of different stuff. Try different places, different kinds of music, different genres, different styles. I think being the most versatile player you can be behooves you in so many ways. So just putting yourself out there.
Never say no to a gig? Kind of?
Yeah, kind of never say no until you're able to say no, but never say no to a gig. But kind of same what Eva just said. Like somebody asks you to go out to coffee, as a musician that wants to get together, do anything. That might lead to something. Go to a gig, introduce yourself to them. If you go to a club, introduce yourself to the drummer or bass player, guitar player. I mean, I just had that happen to me like 3 weeks ago, and it turned into a gig. I mean, I never thought that. I went to go see this great jazz guitar player named Charlie Hunter at McCabe's here in L.A. And, after the gig, I knew Charlie, he invited me to the gig, but I loved his drummer, and I, introduced myself, and he lives in New Orleans, and, like a week later, he got me on I'm going to go in a couple months, go do a record down there with some guy who uses the drummer, and, just by talking to him, I don't know, just things happen, so go meet people, who you admire, ask people who are older than you or different style of music that you play, go put yourself out there and introduce yourself. Just if you get one gig, that gig will lead to 4 more gigs, and that gig will lead to 8 more gigs. I mean, just keep at it.
I'll add just a small thing to that. You never know who's going to come back in your life down the line. And this has happened to me. I got the Pink gig because I did an audition 2 years prior. But when I did that audition, I didn't get it, but I did my best, and that MD remembered me. So when you're playing a gig, whether you're playing to 2 people or 200 people, play your best gig that you're going to do, because you never know who's going to come back around. Be a good person. Be cool. Just make those good impressions.
I think that's some of the best advice anyone could give. I really think that you play the best that you can play. I played a gig last night at the Grove, and it was a bunch of songs that I didn't know. I wish I had spent a little bit more time learning them. But when I look back, when people were coming to me afterwards and saying, "Oh no, it was good," I was just thinking to myself, why was there? I was kind of like on edge and trying to make sure that I caught stuff. But I think that what I've done is over the years, what I've built in is every moment I try to play the best that I can play here. Make a mistake. Right after that mistake, I try to play the best that I can play, just going from there. And the more that you do that, it's like she just said, someone is always listening. Someone is always listening, and you don't know where that's going to take you. So it behooves you, which I think is the word of the round
The
table.
word is behoove.
to do your best and try to be at your best every time you play, no matter if there's one person in the audience or whatever.
The bartender could be a booker
Yeah.
or an MD or something. You never know.
Or in Darryl's case, his mom was listening. Listen, folks, first off, let's give a big round of applause to our panel.